Right now, there's a proposed budget on the table for the city of Atlanta. We're going to take a look at what's in it and what's not in it, and will it set up the ATL for success in the coming years? Also, we'll examine a group of people who are not happy about Governor Kemp's tort reform package being signed into law. And one viewer is taken in by insurance fraud. See how we were able to straighten things out and save the viewer thousands of dollars. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chester McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We invite the experts in to share their take on today's top stories, and we try to have a little bit of fun as well. Let's get started with this. The city of Atlanta has put forward a proposed budget for the 2026 fiscal year. The $3 billion operating budget also includes a $975 million general fund budget. This aim is at boosting salaries and bringing upgrades to first responding agencies like APD and Atlanta Fire and Rescue. Atlanta's total budget for the 2025 fiscal year came in at $2.75 billion. This budget comes as the city faces a $20 million deficit. Mayor Andre Dickens says that the budget reflects those values and the steadfast commitment to strengthening our neighborhoods and strategic investment of our infrastructure. Let's get a further perspective on this now. Joining us now is Howard Shook, member of the Atlanta City Council and chair of the Finance and Executive Committee. Mr. Shook, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, give me your initial take on the budget for 2026.
So we've been told for a while now that because FY25 is probably going to finish that year in a deficit position, that has got a lot to do with informing what the administration wanted to present for the FY26 spending plan, a lot of which was put online just yesterday, and we'll get the budget book, the bound 4-inch thick document, Friday afternoon.
Wow. Talk to me about the public safety factor being stressed on this budget.
Well, it's going to be another growth year for police and for fire. That's public safety is just considered by so many people to be a paramount responsibility of all governments, big and small. We have been trying to grow our police force for many years now to get it up to the 2,000 authorized position level. That's been the goal for so many administrations, and which was only briefly attained some years back. Since then, the competition for police recruits has become a nationwide competition, a bidding war. And so, we either compete or you give up. And so we've been increasing their salaries and enhancing the pension plan, and those things are growing the force, which of course adds to the salary line. The good news is it's going to diminish over time, the overtime that they constantly get themselves in trouble over.
Mr. Howard, so many major events coming down the pike for the city of Atlanta, the biggest being next year's World Cup. Does the budget set up Atlanta to be successful with this big ticket item coming in without sinking future budgets?
Yeah, I hope so. I'm a warrior. So, I'm going to be praying, all the pipes stay where they're supposed to stay and all of that. I will say it's kind of a double-edged sword, the steady diet of mega sporting and entertainment events that we have, because those are overtime generators for sure, and that's had a whole lot to do with the deficit we're running it for FY25.
Gotcha. Does the budget have anything in it that you wish may not have, that didn't make it?
I'll know more when I actually see it instead of just kind of looking at it from the 50,000 foot altitude. I can already tell that it takes the approach of kind of cutting everybody by more or less similar amounts. What I have always pined to see was let's start from scratch, zero-based budgeting approach. It's never been my belief that every program and activity that the city funds is equally as important as the one ahead of it or behind it in the alphabet.
Okay, so you have to continue to look over it. What are the next steps?
Okay, so we'll get the actual budget Friday afternoon. Monday's a full council meeting, and then Tuesday begins what will essentially be a month-long, cavalcade of kind of every day, all day budget hearings where the finance committee will, have all the departments, each in its turn, troop in and explain its ask.
Do you expect to see a lot of haggling over it? Do you expect to a lot of back and forth going on?
Because in many ways this is going to represent a slight contraction from prior years. There are going to be some of my colleagues, the newer members for whom this is their first term on council. They haven't been through this before, so it'll be interesting to see, how they balance their fiduciary responsibilities in a realistic context of a shrinking budget rather than doing what they like to do, which is, of course, prioritize funding for the services and activities that they think are, very important.
Gotcha. All right. Howard Schutt with Atlanta City Council. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. City leaders have officially opened the $118 million Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. It also comes after contentious debate, legal battles, and protests, with opponents dubbing the project Cop City. Mayor Andre Dickens, Governor Brian Kemp, and other leaders addressed the challenges that came along with getting the facility up and running, which included attacks on the property dating back to 2022. City leaders hope this will not only improve their training, but also their ability to attract and retain new hires.
Because while they're celebrating the further militarization of our community and the suck of economic resources into issues that Atlantans really care about, we're here to celebrate that we launched a global movement around these cop cities.
Today isn't just about opening a facility. It's about supporting the men and women on the ground who carry out that mission every single day. Our law enforcement officers, our firefighters, our EMTs, our corrections officers, our 911 operators, and every single person who answers the call to face danger so that the rest of us do not have to.
Now, there is a petition to force a public vote on the project, but it is currently held up in court. And dozens of activists are facing RICO charges in connection with what they called Stop Cop City protest. All right, let's take a look at our forecast for today, and it is going to be a warm one out there this afternoon. We are looking at, partly to mostly sunny skies at times today. It's only a 20% chance for an isolated shower. Most of us won't see it. Consider yourself fortunate if you get that rain on your lawn, that natural water. We'll see another dry day tomorrow for much of the day on Thursday. It's not until we get to the evening that a couple thunderstorms could move into the area. We'll be watching for strong thunderstorms off to the west. They will be falling apart, but some of those could hold together and move into the area. We'll do the same on Friday, another evening with some scattered showers and thunderstorms. That will linger now into Saturday with a front trying to pass through the area. I think it will get hung up a little bit before it moves through, so we'll extend our shower activity into Saturday, and then we'll clear it out for Sunday and stay clear as we head into next week. Don't go anywhere, folks. You're watching The Take, and we'll be back right after this. President Donald Trump capping his first 100 days of his second term as president with a rally last night in Michigan, along with some softening of imposed auto tariffs. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr, who's been covering politics for years now. And Alice, the president seems eager to emphasize his campaign-style themes over these 100 days in office. How much of this ongoing campaign rhetoric is shaping his actual policy decisions?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. We know that President Trump is very comfortable, very happy in those rally-like settings. And he said last night to the crowd that he misses the campaign. He misses being out there with people in that kind of setting. And he certainly got into his flow of talking about immigration, the economy, the areas where he believes that he ran on and that brought him to his victory. And so certainly he's going to want to lean into those messages again. And whether it drives what he's doing now, it's sort of a piece with the way that he ran his campaign and then what the agenda is that he's been pursuing. He would certainly say, and did say last night, that he's keeping his campaign promises, and there's no question that immigration has been at the top of the list along with the economy. Worth noting that we just got a new report showing that GDP actually shrank a little bit in the first quarter of this year for the first time since the pandemic era. And the data is a little bit complicated because the tariffs are just beginning to rear their heads, and a lot of it is being affected by the amount of imports that were coming in ahead of the tariffs really spiking. But that's notable that GDP is contracting because certainly President Trump ran on, being able to have a booming economy. He ran on bringing down inflation, things that are not necessarily going exactly the way that he promised they would from day one. In fact, in a new interview with ABC News, he's saying now that during the campaign, he said there would be this transition period. But when you look back at his statements, he talked a lot about reducing inflation from day one.
Alice, later on today, we're going to hear from former Vice President Kamala Harris. What sort of tone are we expecting to hear from her speech?
Yeah, this is one to watch. She really has not been out there much at all publicly since her election loss to President Trump. And she is expected to kind of come out forcefully now that she's maybe sort of rearing her head in this first big speech. She has talked a little bit about feeling like people are not being public enough and pushing back. She's spoken about some of the universities, companies, et cetera, that have kind of fallen in line with what the Trump administration is asking for in a variety of ways and encouraging more people to stand up and speak out. So I think that's likely to be the tone. She's at this moment where people are kind of starting to wonder what her political future is. There's been some pretty serious discussion of her potentially running for governor of California, and if not that, whether she would take another crack at running for president. So she's not likely to make any announcement like that, but she's certainly beginning to maybe try to position herself for her next move.
That's a good one right there. I wonder what that will be. So we'll all be waiting for that. Finally, there's an unusual public disagreement between President Trump and Amazon over the tariffs related to price increases. Could tension like this influence corporate Americans to support or oppose President Trump's trade policies?
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen that in a variety of ways. I was just mentioning it of different universities, different law firms. There have been different organizations that President Trump has, publicly made certain demands of, and we've kind of seen, in some cases, push back, but in many cases, kind of shifting and trying to accommodate what the president wants. And this could or could not be another example of that. Amazon quickly responded. This was a report that came out that said that Amazon was going to start listing tariff-related price increases on imported items, and President Trump then called Amazon's owner, Jeff Bezos, and apparently voiced some displeasure at that idea. The White House had called it a political act. But Amazon quickly said, no, they were never going to do it on the main site, and now it's not going to happen at all. So read into that exactly what you will, Chesley.
Gotcha. Alice, thanks so much for always joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow. All right, one person is dead and two hurt after a house fire in the city of Pendergrass, that's in Jackson County. It happened just before 4 o'clock this morning. One person was also rescued from the home. The cause remains under investigation. Police in Gwinnett County are searching for a homicide suspect. They say it happened, or appears it came from some sort of domestic dispute at a home in Snellville earlier this morning. Police received a call from one of the children inside about a man and a woman fighting. By the time officers arrived at the scene, they say the woman was dead and the man was gone. Colin Gray, the father of accused Appalachian High School shooter, has a court date set for September 8th. He faces 29 charges, including second-degree murder, accused of providing the gun used in the mass shooting last September. His son, 14-year-old Colt Gray, is accused of killing 2 students and 2 teachers. Both Colin and Colt Gray have requested to move their trials out of Barrow County. All right, last week, Governor Kemp signed several bills into law addressing a third-party litigation financing and reducing insurance costs in Georgia. The tort reform package also works to reduce frivolous lawsuits by making it more difficult to obtain a trial by jury and limiting the amount of damages rewarded. Now, this is having lawyers having to change the way they operate. Joining us now on The Take is Atlanta-based trial lawyer Kara Phillips. Kara, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Give us your take on the governor's package, now a law.
Yeah, unfortunately, many Georgians lost their right to a civil trial last Monday, April 21st, as a result of this law, and the implications for the most vulnerable among us, children, the elderly, and all sexual assault survivors, are really devastating.
All right. Well, a statement that Governor Kemp said that the tort reform package is targeted at what he calls the out of balance legal environment. Has that been out of alignment?
No, the jury system is one of the most amazing accomplishments that we have in our democracy. And to find 12 people who are able to reach an agreement unanimously about how someone has been injured and what their damages are is truly an important bedrock of our entire system and civil justice system. So no, there's been no out of balance at all.
So how will this change the way you operate in trial now?
Changes many things. And honestly, it's a lot of boring legal lawyer stuff. But things like whether or not a child victim or a sexual assault victim will have to testify twice during the course of a trial, or even 3 times because of bifurcation, whether or not lawyers can say things about the value of memories, non-economic damages, things that people lose when instead of being able to walk down an aisle for their wedding, they've got a traumatic brain injury and they can't experience those joys of life. Those are the things that this will ultimately hamper, that will ultimately not be accessible to people who are seeking civil justice.
Now, one of the backers of this was President Pro Tem of the State Senate, John F. Kennedy. Here's what he told us just ahead of the final passage of the package.
I would say the little guy and businesses and all of Georgians. If you think about how insurance works, claims are made against a policy that is then used to compensate people. When the cost of doing business in Georgia for any insurance continues to go up because of nuclear verdicts, because of insurance companies are scared to try cases in our court system because of the verdicts and the amounts that have been paid that are irrational related to what the harm or the injury is, they settle claims at a much higher rate. All that puts upward pressure on cost. And the question really is, who ultimately pays that?
Kara, talk about the nuclear verdicts that he's talking about in his comments there.
Sure. I'll give you an example of a nuclear verdict. My client's daughter was killed by a drunk driver, and instead of paying the policy limits of $25,000 to this grieving mother, the insurance company opted to fight her. And ultimately, we were able to get a judgment against not the insurance company, right? The insured, who wasn't the driver, but was the person who held the insurance policy for the car that he was driving, of $58 million. And that's because the life of this young 22-year-old was worth every penny of that. Mm-hmm. The problem with that and the nuclear verdict that resulted from that was entirely the insurance company's determination not to pay pennies on the dollar for the life of a beautiful young woman. And that is what the insurance companies do. The statements by Senator Kennedy talk about things that don't exist. The idea that insurance premiums rise as a result of litigation has been debunked time after time. The notion that Georgia is a judicial hellhole has been debunked time after time and was only propagated by insurance company and their behind-the-scenes PR campaign to try and convince Georgia citizens that this is an actual thing, while they just raised premiums because they could and invested the money and made billions.
All right. Atlanta-based trial lawyer Kara Phillips, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your insight this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Plenty more stories ahead, folks. This is The Take on 11Alive Plus. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the show. Here's a question for you. What would you do if you opened up your mail and you found out you've been enrolled in a healthcare insurance plan that you never signed up for, one that could end up costing you thousands of dollars? That's exactly what happened to a Woodstock woman who turned to 11Alive News for help. 11Alive consumer investigative reporter Liza Lucas joins us now. And Liza, she thought she had everything covered into her insurance through work, and then she got this surprise letter. Talk to us about it.
Exactly, Chesley, and good morning. Crystal Bedford, she basically got a letter saying her health plan with Oscar Insurance was being renewed. But here's the thing, she'd never heard of Oscar and already had insurance through her job. Now that letter claimed it was an Affordable Care Act plan, which she'd signed up for, but she told 11Alive she never signed up for that policy.
Well, Eliza, could she just have canceled that policy?
Well, that's the obvious question. Of course, she did try. That was the first step in it. She tried everything, she said. She told me that she tried to reach out to the health insurance company, and she actually got confirmation that it was canceled. But then a few months later, we fast forward to January when those new insurance cards comes in the mail, and they did for the Oscar plan. And so she tried to cancel again. She appealed to the marketplace, the insurance commissioner. She was trying it all, Crystal tells me. And then tax season hit and the situation got even more complicated. Crystal learned that the federal government had paid nearly $10,000 in premium tax credits on her behalf, again, for this plan that she had never authorized.
The government had paid almost $10,000 in premiums for me, and my heart dropped. It said I was going to owe back $7,500, and I lost it.
You can imagine the panic you would feel if you suddenly owed $7,500 unexpectedly. So we're talking about major money on the line here. Crystal decided to reach out to 11Alive for some help. We reached out to the insurance company, and that's when she says the ball started rolling and a supervisor contacted her. Together, they uncovered proof that her enrollment had indeed been fraudulent, Chesley.
So what about Crystal now? Does she still owe that money? Does she still owe the $7,500?
Well, I want to give you some perspective here about this too. I want to turn to some numbers on screen. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, they've been cracking down on fraud since 2023. So this is not an isolated case. We're talking about between January and August of last year, the agency tracked more than 274,000 complaints related to ACA changes that were not authorized. The agency basically saying that the complaints have dropped since these changes were made to the marketplace. But Crystal hopes that sharing her story is going to show the other people that this is still very much happening. And I know you had a question about that money, Chesley.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money. Of course, you put yourself in the situation, and wow, if you still owe that money, I mean, that's a lot to pay for something you never signed up for.
Again, $7,500. So I'm not going to reveal it all right here, but let's just say that she's very good at documentation. So there's a happy ending to this story, and hopefully viewers will watch and walk away with more awareness of what's happening in case they too have been impacted. And that's Crystal's hope for speaking up about this.
Absolutely. I would think that if I didn't sign my name or something, or if they don't have my correct information, how could they sign me up for something that I now owe for? Eliza, we're going to be watching your story. I'm definitely going to be watching that just to see if somebody has my name out there. It's a unique name, so, you know, I got to watch. Thanks a lot, Eliza. Really appreciate it. You can watch Eliza's full story tonight on 11 Live News at 11 and right here on 11 Live Plus. Liza Lucas with a very interesting story. She always brings the interesting stories that you have to stay tuned for. All right, don't go anywhere, folks. Back with my final take right after this. All right, we are looking at a warm day today. Temperatures getting up to 84 degrees. Keep in mind, that's well above our average for this time of year. We should be in the upper 70s. We'll be at 84 degrees for an afternoon high. Very low threat for a shower or two, only at 20%. It's going to be dry for much of the day on Thursday. You notice that 40% chance with PM right there? That means showers coming in during the evening. I'm thinking after 8 or 9 o'clock, we could see some showers and thunderstorms roll into the area. Same on Friday. We're looking at the chance for evening showers and thunderstorms. Got a front that's going to be making its way into the area. I think it lingers over us on Saturday. So we'll start off with some showers, maybe get some thunderstorms during the afternoon. Should be clearing out late afternoon going into the evening. Temperatures a bit cooler behind the front as well. 78 on Saturday, Sunday 77, and then back to the 80s, low 80s as a matter of fact, as we begin the work week next week. Monday, you got 80 degrees. Tuesday, 81 with partly sunny skies. All right, before we go, my final take, you know, there's an online debate, probably should be put to rest, okay, by now. This is the question. Could 100 men take one gorilla and win? Take them on. Well, this reminds me of those hypothetical debates that we would have back in the barbershop when I was younger. We didn't have an internet to debate the question, of course, like it's running wild on the internet now. And we even debated that in the newsroom, and most people said, no way the men would win. Well, I thought differently. In fact, I think 20 men could take a gorilla. We've been domesticating animals for centuries now with less men, right? Plus, at some point, the gorilla has to get tired, right? It has incredible strength, but not incredible stamina. Right? Still, most disagree with me. Now, the experts have weighed in and said, yeah, one gorilla could certainly beat one man, but the sheer number of men would certainly be at the gorilla's disadvantage. Look, we're not trying to make this something real. It's a fun debate. We're not advocating going out and fighting gorillas. Don't do it. They're gentle giants, unless they're severely provoked, all right? Let's move on to the next debate, like, will the Falcons win the Super Bowl next year? Well, that's probably already been decided as well. That's all the time we have for you today, folks. Make it a great day, and make sure you encourage someone, and don't go fighting gorillas, okay?